Happy New Year's! I'm Doug from Dynamic Computing, and welcome to episode 142 of 10-Minute Amiga Retro Cast. This week we're revisiting one of my older computers, my Amiga 2000. Let's take a quick peek at what she is. Of course, she's naked right now because I'm putting cards in and out of her, but she's a pretty robust machine. She's got a nice 68040 GVP card running at 33 megahertz with 64 megabytes of RAM. She's got 2 megabytes of chip RAM. She's got a video toaster over there. She's got a Picasso 2 retargetable graphics card here, a nice time-based corrector, and an A2065 networking card. But today, we're not using the 24-bit features of this particular Amiga with a video toaster and the Picasso. We're going back to good old ECS Amiga graphics. Travel back with me, if you will, to 1988. That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? I had a mullet that you just would not believe. That thing was a thing of beauty. But on to the Amiga. Now, the Amiga had some of the best graphics of any computer for home users on the market in the late 80s. She had beautiful 12-bit, 4096 color graphics, absolutely stunning animation capabilities, fantastic multitasking. Now, could PCs and Macs in 87 and 88 get the same quality of graphics or even surpass the Amiga? Absolutely they could. For example, you could buy yourself a nice Mac 2 with a 13-inch monitor and 8-bit, that's 256 colors on screen at one time, graphics, for just a simple $7,100. No problem at all, just pull out the credit card. Or you could get a PC with one of the newer VGA graphics cards, maybe a nice fast 286 or even a 386 at that point in time. Nice VGA card, $2,500 to $5,000 depending on the features you want. You know, while the Amiga, of course, was, $1,200 or $1,500 with a monitor. None of these, of course, could animate or multitask like the Amiga, but they could display a nice 256 color image, if you sold a kidney and your firstborn child and remortgaged your house. Yeah, you could absolutely do it on a Mac or a PC. But honestly, Amiga OCS graphics in 88 did have some weaknesses, no matter how stunning they were. Of course, a nice 4096 color ham 6 image like some of these that you see right here, absolutely stunning, absolutely beautiful. But you look at them and you know they're generated on a computer. You can see the pixels, you can see the banding, you can occasionally see the aliasing. So what was an Amiga user in 1988 to do to get higher quality graphic images out of their Amiga? Enter the era of the frame buffer. Or, in 88, the beginning of the era of the frame buffer, because most of them didn't come for another 2 or 3 years. A frame buffer is a card that usually has about a megabyte or more of RAM right on it, and that RAM is exclusively used for displaying images. You dump the image to the frame buffer memory, the frame buffer sends it out to the monitor. And you'd usually take these images and, say, dump them to tape on a nice VHS tape or something. Now, a VGA card of the same era might have 256 kilobytes, or if you're lucky, 512 kilobytes. Well, lucky and rich. But even those could not display a 640 by 480 true color like a 24-bit image. They just didn't have the memory. Now, one big disadvantage of frame buffers is that they're not graphics cards. It's not a replacement for, the Amiga's graphics. They're not designed to have the contents of their memory changed quickly. They're meant to display single images at a time and then dump the image to tape. So they usually cannot be used to display moving graphics or even a GUI like Workbench. Some of them in the future did play some tricks, so you could sort of do it with double buffered animations most of the time. Now I have in my hot little hands the Mimetics Framebuffer from 1988. Now this is designed as a Zorro 2 card. Let's get a good view of that. You can see the memory over here on the side right here, blah blah. And those are expandable. It might have shipped with 512K. You could expand it to 1 meg. And then on this side, you've got a output for video and an input for video, which we'll talk about in a moment. This is a Zorro 2 card. It works equally as well in Amiga 2000, a 3000, an A4000, and even an Amiga 500 or 1000 if you have one of the Zorro adapters on it. Now this little beauty can display 768 by 484 pixels in a 21-bit format. All right, not quite 24-bit, which is 16 million colors. 21-bit is 2,097,152 colors, of which I can only name like 1,873,211 of those colors. After that, not quite 24-bit true color, but it's mighty close. And I assume that they did it this way, number one, because it's 1988, and number two, to reduce the needs of the RAM and the chips on the particular card, so they didn't have to work quite so hard to generate 24-bit color. Now, I'll be honest here. Mimetics was not known for their absolutely knockout quality hardware. They made some cool pieces of software, some 3D editing software and a couple of other packages that were pretty good. But they made this, the AmiGen Genlock, which I'll do a show on in the future. This is a cheap and cheerful, under $200 Genlock that, how do I phrase this? Kind of sucked according to every review I've read about it. The colors were off, the synchronization was off, so maybe doing a home movie or a birthday party is fine. You're never going to use an AmiGen for business. On their Framebuffer, they put out a little higher quality product. And you have to give them credit because nobody else was doing it. People were not beating down the walls to come out with 21 or 24-bit Framebuffers for the Amiga in 1988. Again, that came later. I mentioned this thing has an input and an output, BNC. Now, BNC was fairly popular on some higher-end VTRs, videotape recorders, less common on VHSs for consumer level. But you get one of these little adapters. It's literally a BNC to composite adapter. You got yourself a composite port. Works fine. But why does it have an input and an output? Good question. Apparently, there's a card that goes along with this, somehow piggybacks on with this, that added image capture, 21-bit image capture, in 1/15 of a second for a 730 or 768 by 484 image, which was pretty cool. I mean, that's better than the Digiview. The problem is, I can't find any information on the card. I can find references to it. You know, yeah, you can capture images if you get this adapter. Never seen a picture. Never seen a review, never seen a piece of software for it. Can't find anything on it. If you have any information on the capture component for the Mimetics card, let me know. Let's get this little guy plugged in to the Amiga 2000 and take a look at some of the images. So here we see my Amiga 2000 displaying 4-color multi-scan mode, so it gives us a nice rock-solid 640 by 480 image on a 31.5 kilohertz monitor. And above that, we see my Sony Bravia TV, and we have a nice little cable running right down to my Mimetics Framebuffer. Now, I did find references that Sculpt 3D had a viewer for it, and I know there was a disc that originally came with it that probably had a nice image viewer for it, but I can't find it. There's a program called MegaPaint that supposedly supported it, so I downloaded that. And it was truly the nastiest piece of paint program garbage I've seen on the Amiga, and I found no resources in it to display in the Framebuffer. Videoscape 3D supported it, but what most interested me was Art Department Professional. And if you guys know me at all, you know that I'm a huge fan of Art Department Professional on the Amiga. It's a really, really great image editing and converting program and can work with a ton of formats. It said that it supported the Framebuffer. So I loaded up version 2.5, which you see right here. I went to the savers, and there was absolutely zero listing for the Framebuffer. So I pulled out my good old Art Department book and read through it, and I said, yep, we used to support the Framebuffer, but nobody was using it anymore, so we took out all of the drivers for it in version 2.3. They were gone. So what I did is I went online and I found version 2.2. You see I've got the floppy for it right here, and I started going through some of the files in it, and I found this one called saversexpands.lha. I decompressed that to RAM, and inside that folder was a file called Framebuffer. I copied that file over to the Savers folder in Art Department Professional on my work drive, loaded up Art Department Professional, and boom, Framebuffer appeared, and suddenly it would see the card. So from what I've read about it, the Framebuffer has a pretty weak color, and it gives some ghosting and it gives some artifacting, is what I read in the reviews. Let's see what it does in reality here. Let's go ahead and open up an image, and we're going to open up Emmy Clown. This is a 1280 by 720 AGA image, so it is actually saved in full 24-bit format. So what we want to do is bring this image down to 768 by 482, and we'll rescale the image because that's the image format that the unit works with. All right, we've got the image scaled. Now literally all you do, instead of displaying it like here where you'd set the rendering screen for, you know, high res or low res or something like that to display it on one of the Amiga modes, what you're going to want to do is instead come down here to Savers and double click Framebuffer. And you see then it's actually writing the image to the Framebuffer in the Amiga 2000, and in a second you're going to see it pop up on the Sony. And here she comes. And it's my beautiful daughter Emily in full 21-bit color, and I am intentionally viewing it on the screen instead of dumping it to one of my capture devices so we can see just what it would look like in the 1980s. Hi Emily, what a cutie, huh? Now what we'll do, just for comparison's sake, let's scale this down and display this as a ham image. So I'm going to just bring it down to 368 by 482. We're going to scale the image down. Now notice this is not affecting what's being displayed on the Framebuffer in 1 bit. We're going to change the render screen, low res, ham mode, and we're going to execute it, and the Framebuffer stays intact while it generates an actual Amiga screen. And you can see, let's zoom in a little bit here. You can see it still looks fantastic in ham 6 mode. I mean, absolutely, I don't have any complaints about it, but you can see some of the pixelization there. You can see a little better. You can see some of the banding, and it's not like photographic quality, where the one above it, still in the Framebuffer, wow, knock your socks off quality. Now here's something I thought was pretty interesting that I discovered. So we've got, you know, the Amiga running just fine right here. If we do the 3-fingered salute, Amiga control, and reboot the Amiga, look at the Framebuffer screen. It stays there. The Framebuffer is still getting power from the Zorro 2 bus. It doesn't care a fig Newton that the Amiga is now in the middle of rebooting. It keeps its image perfectly solid. When it boots up, it'll still be there. It's really kind of interesting. So we're going to take a look at a couple of more images that I've generated. This one I took in downtown Tucson with my Canon camera and reduced it down to 768 by 480, and it's displaying in beautiful 20-bit color, 21-bit color. Let's take a look at a few more. These are my adorable little kitties. That's Angela on the left and Maya on the right. Angela looks about the same now. Maya's about 400 pounds heavier than this picture right here. Now I like this one because of the patterning in the actual screen door right there is fairly fine, and the details show up pretty good on the Framebuffer. So I thought this was a cute little image. Now this one, of course, is from Eric Schwartz. This was his winning contribution to Amiga Art Contest Hand Drawn. What I wanted to show here is how it can take an AGA image, which is what this was. This is was originally like a 1280 by 970 AGA image, convert it down to 736 by 484, and it displays beautifully on the Amiga 2000 in exactly how it's supposed to look. This one I've always loved. This is from our good friend Pixel Vixen, Vicky. And this is a picture of the Louvre. Louvre, you have to say it like that or you're not cool. The Louvre that she took several years ago and I used in one of my early shows, like episode 36. But let's take a closer look at this one and see what it looks like in some traditional Amiga resolutions. What we're doing here is we're rendering this in 736 by 480 in 16 color mode, And you know what? It actually looks really good. Now you can tell when you get in there that it's a 16 color high-res image, but when you compare the two of them side by side, not bad really. I mean, there's nothing really to complain about there. Now let's look at this same thing in ham mode and see what it can do. Now we're generating it in 368 by 482 ham mode. You see the colors actually are more vivid than it was in the 16 color mode. There's still some pixelization because it is in a lower resolution mode, but you know, the Amiga is pretty incredible how it can do, you know, a nice high resolution 21-bit and then its own 12-bit, and they don't look half bad. Here's another nice one. This is from a trip I made to San Diego a couple of years back, and I like this because it really brings out the blues a little bit, and really you can see the quality of the banding and the rocks there over on the side. You can see where the color of the rocks changes. It's really kind of a neat example of what this frame buffer is actually capable of creating. Now this is kind of a neat one here. This is from Punivoid. He's a member of one of the demo scenes, and he did this one last year for last year's Amiga art contest. This is called Food for Goats. It's a bus stop with a thatched roof, and I thought it generated really nice on the frame buffer. And here for reference is the Ham 6 version of the same picture, which again, really good. I mean, you know, look at that thing. That's not bad at all. That's got some nice detail to it. It's a beautiful picture, and compared to the one above it, that's the frame buffer. That's the Ham 6 version. I mean, the frame buffer really does an incredible job, but hey, that Amiga's not too bad. Now this next one is from Anthony Jarvis, who does the Amiga Show. This was an entry into the Amiga Art Contest 2022. I'm specifically pointing this one out because this, believe it or not, is a Digiview picture, a 21-bit Digiview picture. The standard Digiview, and you'll see a review for it right up there, can record or can capture in full 21-bit mode and then save them as RGB images. Art Department Professional can open them up. The frame buffer can display them. That is from a piece of hardware from 1988 that captured that image. Can you imagine having this set up back in 1988 where you had a Digiview and you could capture images on your Digiview and you could display them back on your Amiga in that quality? That would just be fantastic. It actually brings up a pretty interesting topic, this whole 21-bit per pixel Amiga RGB image. IFF, Interchange file format, was an incredible format back in the day. It was designed where it didn't care how many bit planes you had. 1-bit plane, 2, 4, 6, 8, whatever. 24 bits, doesn't care. The format itself can handle it. Resolution, whatever. I make 1280 by 720 IFF files. I make 1280 by 1024 IFF files. Bring them back and forth to my PC. The system doesn't care. IFF can handle it just fine. And then the Amiga will just display it in the best possible format that it can find, that it can utilize. It's really incredible. Now, if there was only some phrase or saying that could be used in a situation like this that would kind of put it all in a nutshell. Oh, how about only Amiga makes it possible? So how useful was this back in the day? You know, you're back here in 1988, you got a fully decked out Amiga 2000 with maybe a 68020 in it, and maybe you got 16 megabytes of RAM in it, you know, which is pretty darn awesome for the day. What would you actually do with this? Well, imagine in Sculpt 3D, which this apparently supported just fine, being able to create near photographic quality ray traced images in full 24-bit color, and then send them one frame at a time to the frame buffer and to your videotape recorder or your VHS player, and making a video of unlimited length. You create 10,000 frames in Sculpt 3D. It's going to take a while to render, but you could do it in true almost 24-bit color. No problem at all. How about if you were a magazine publisher? You were using a PageStream or one of the other nice desktop publishing programs, you wanted to put in nice full color images in your magazine that you're creating on the Amiga, but you want to make sure the images are exactly what you want. So you edit them on the Amiga, you create it, you bring them into the Amiga, and you generate them on the frame buffer to make sure it's going to look good in the magazine. No problem at all. How about a wedding photographer who takes a bunch of pictures, 35mm format, scans them in with their Digiview 21-bit per pixel RGB format, and then one at a time creates images in 21 bits per pixel on the frame buffer, saves it to a VHS tape, maybe with a little music in the background, create a slideshow in 21-bit color for their wedding. It would look absolutely gorgeous, and it's something not a lot of other people were able to do back in 1988. Being able to create a VHS tape at home with absolutely gorgeous quality like that. So what's my opinion on the frame buffer? Well, in 2023, it's nearly useless, to be perfectly honest. I've got a DC TV that does even a little bit better job than this even, that also has capture capabilities and animation capabilities. I've got several graphics cards. I got a Retina, CyberGrafx, a Picasso 2 that handle 24-bit images in 640 by 480, no problem at all, and can also display Workbench, and you can retarget all your other programs to it. Far more useful than this. But remember, this is not 2023 we're living here right now. We time travel back to 1988. And in that case, there's nothing else like it out there. Yeah, in 1990, 91, you've got your Opal Visions, you've got your Firecracker cards, you've got half a dozen of other frame buffers that are coming out in 90, 91, 92. But in 1988, that's what you got, and it ain't bad. So why didn't it set the Amiga world on fire? Well, part of it is because it was around during the era of Workbench 1.3, which is fine. But Workbench 1.3, everything was just a little bit higgledy-piggledy, or possibly willy-nilly, when it came to things like drivers and interfacing between programs. Now, you had your IFF format that could transfer between them, so much better than the PCs. But when it came to like drivers for hardware, there wasn't a real standard. It was just like, okay, I'm going to build a driver for this software package, and that's all I'm building. You know, once Workbench 2.0 came out, it brought everything together a little bit better. We had data types, we had better handle over the hardware databases, and it would have probably been a more useful device under Workbench 2.0. I've also found almost no advertising for this. I found a couple of tiny reviews, not even any big reviews, just a couple of blurbs about it. Haven't found any advertisements about it. You can find AmiGen, their Genlock, you can find ads for that, but I couldn't really find any ads for this, so maybe it just wasn't marketed very well and people just didn't know about it very well. Do I like the frame buffer? Absolutely, it's gorgeous. I would have just wet myself if I had one of these back in 1988. Will I use it? No, probably not. It's probably going to go on the shelf in my my rack of Zorro 2 and Zorro 3 cards that I don't use on a regular basis. Now, if I ever found the capture card for it, yeah, I'd plug it in, we'd do some captures, we'd have some fun with it. But I have better ways to display 24-bit images. Heck, I can bust out my Amiga 1200 and do the same image in 1280 by 1024 in 18-bit color. It looks absolutely phenomenal. But she'll have an honored place on my shelf, and maybe I'll pop it in every now and again. Huge thanks to all my patrons who've been supporting me so well over the past couple of years. Here's their names coming down over a slideshow of beautiful 21-bit frame buffer images. Thank you all so much. If you'd like to join in the fun and become a patron for as little as $2 a month, pop on over to patreon.com/10mark for more information. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. I had a lot of fun working on this project here and getting the frame buffer to work properly. Please like and subscribe. It helps the channel so much if you subscribe and if you like the videos. Tell your friends about me too. Comment below on what 24-bit solution you used back in the day and which one you use now. I would love to hear about that. Follow me on Instagram, Mastodon, Facebook, I said Instagram. Twitter, that's the other one. Remember Twitter? I remember Twitter. All the links are right in the description. But until next time, this is Doug from 10 Minute Amiga Retro Cast, signing out.